Both conventions are over, and today's guest is Robert Graham. He is the head of the Arizona Republican Party with a recap and a look to the future. Welcome to the Mike Broomhead Show.
Well, I got a message, I got a song. Can I get a witness? Tell me what's going on. I show the people.
Now, I was in Cleveland for the Republican National Convention, but the Democrats last week in Philadelphia, Hillary Clinton spoke. We've got a full recap and a great guest named Robert Graham. He's the head of the Arizona Republican Party. All that's coming up with hashtag this and Broomhead's best. But we start every show off with something we call the sweep. All right, this week, the speeches that went on all week long, the Democrat National Convention kicked off this week. And the big complaint was, at the very beginning, the first day and a half or so, not one word mentioned about ISIS or the Islamic State or fighting Islamic fundamentalist terrorism. And so the Republicans were complaining. There was another big complaint that during the week, they had parents up there of men, of black men who had been killed by cops. Michael Brown from Ferguson, Missouri. The problem I had with that, it's one thing to complain when cops act the wrong way. You can't indict everybody and say it's racially motivated. I think that's wrong. But if someone does something wrong, point it out. Michael Brown died because Michael Brown attacked a cop twice. It was found that hands up, don't shoot was a complete lie. And yet, those parents were on stage. So much complaint by people in general, but the police union in Philadelphia that hosted the convention said they will not soon forget the fact that while they were outside protecting the convention, they were being badmouthed from the stage inside. So on the last night of the convention, they had a moment of silence for officers killed in the line of duty. And what happened? 4 or 5 people from the crowd began shouting, "Black Lives Matter." It was an embarrassment. But the speeches throughout the week, some of the highlights, Bill Clinton spoke, very popular speaker, but a little bit odd because Bill talked about the girl he fell in love with in 1971, and he told this love story between him and Hillary. The problem is, I don't care who you are, if you are over the age of 35, you could not listen to him tell that story and not think the name Monica Lewinsky. It just was a weird thing for him to do. President Obama spoke and did a much better job of laying out the case of why she'd be qualified to be president of the United States. Now, I don't believe that she is, but he did a much better job. He is a much better public speaker than she is. And he said his goodbye to the American people, actually to American Democrats, to the Democratic Party. So it was a moment where he said his farewell to the party. What was odd is it looks as if in comparisons in ratings, the Ted Cruz speech on night 3 had better ratings than the Obama speech on night 3 of the Democrats, when the entire week the Democrats were getting better ratings than the Republicans overall. Joe Biden gave a resounding Joe Biden type of speech. He's another guy that connects very well with the audience. So here's the question. When you have public speakers like a Bill Clinton, who was a great public speaker, Joe Biden, who connects with the crowd and is kind of every man, Barack Obama, when he's speaking as a visionary, remember the Hope and Change speech when he was running for president. They're such great public speakers. Was the Hillary speech going to be overshadowed? The answer is absolutely. There was no doubt it was going to be. Hillary gave a speech that did what she needed to accomplish. I want you to see a little piece of this. She's subdued, she's not shrill, she's not cracking jokes, so at times she seems disconnected. But here's one of the little bits of what she said about Donald Trump.
A man you can bait with a tweet is not a man we can trust with nuclear weapons.
All right, so there you have it. She's going after Donald Trump in her speech just a little bit, but she talked about a few things that were interesting to me. She alluded to her book. She said, I wrote a book called It Takes a Village. And then she launched into, if you started a business or you did this or you did that, you can't do it by yourself. Now, everybody would say there's some truth in that. Except she's not talking about the lack of entrepreneurial spirit. She's talking about you have to have the government and other people to help you. It was ridiculous. And what we didn't see was on the placards in there that said Hillary, somebody blocked out the H, blocked out the I, then after the first L, blocked out the bottom of the second L, and it looks like the word liar. This was the California delegation. About 35, 36 of the Bernie Sanders delegates walked out during her speech. We never saw any of that. Oh, and by the way, Bernie Sanders has left the Democratic Party. He said, I'm going back to being independent. I was an independent. I am an independent. And he's left the party. So I don't know how much unity was put together with the Democrats, but that was the week in review. Robert Graham joins me in just a moment. He is the head of the Republican Party in Arizona to talk about what happened in Cleveland and the Republicans, and we also get his opinion on what's happening with the Democrats. As now we move forward, within a few weeks, a few months, we will be introducing a new president of the United States. My interview with Robert Graham happens here in just a moment. Don't go away. So the Republican National Convention is over. The Democratic Convention is going on as we speak. So we invited Robert Graham, GOP chairman here in Arizona. I wanted to wait till you got some sleep.
It's good, thank you.
Finally got some sleep?
Finally got some sleep.
And talk to you a little bit of recap of what you saw in Cleveland. We were there at the same time, but I'd love to get your perspective as Arizona chairman. And then maybe we'll talk a little bit about what we're seeing this week in the Democrats and how the two now are going to face off moving toward November. What did you think of Cleveland overall? There was a little bit of discontent with the Ted Cruz supporters. There were some people that got up and walked out, and it wasn't a massive walkout, but there was some discontent early in the week. How was that handled, do you think, by the party?
Well, I think it was handled pretty well. I mean, each state had the responsibility of handling it themselves. And we had a delegation of 58 members plus our alternates. And we had some people that were all in for Cruz and some people that kind of considered themselves part of that Unbound the Delegate movement that was happening. And so people, they battled around. There were a lot of discussions, a lot of private discussions where we just kind of walked through what was going on and really the legitimacy of their vote as a delegate. So our state was one that stayed united and on all fronts, on roll call, on the 58 votes and so on. But there are other states like Texas and Virginia and other states that really had a difficult time bringing some people together, but ultimately they did. So it's just part of the process. It's part of that great First Amendment we talk about. But if you see what happened, I think it was a great unifying last couple days when it came to Melania's speech and then Trump finishing things off.
It was funny because in the morning when the business is being done, during the day when the business was being done, that was where the spirit of debate was. But why would we want it to be in lockstep anyway? That's where the time for debate is. But when it came time to the evening, and I think it was solidified during Ted Cruz's speech, which eventually I want to get to some of the speeches. Right. But when that room was kind of unified behind Trump, no matter what Ted Cruz was saying or not saying, I think by the end of the week, it was definitely a pro-Trump room, that was a unified building.
It was, yeah. I mean, when you lead into the whole process, the rules were up for discussion in committee. The platform was up in discussion. Credentials were up for discussion. They went through 112-member committees that were elected by their states to represent them. And it went through this entire process. Talk about heated debate, intense debate. There were some rule modifications and changes and platform dynamics. And then it came back out to the main floor where they had another chance in committee to make things. And then it went to the vote. If you saw the brouhaha and people getting all excited, that was them exercising their rights as members of the delegation. And so they were heard. They processed it when it got a little bit out of hand. The chairman, stepped out. And people calmed down. They stepped back in and then finished off the meeting. But people really had the opportunity to say what they wanted to say and try to get there. But again, a lot of the movements were defeated in the general body, but they were given the opportunity to speak and have the debate. And that is Republican.
Right.
Individuals. We like the idea that other people have other ideas. And we don't have to agree. We can sharpen the shawl, but we're not the follow along to get along Democrat Party.
When you we look back at the speeches, I'll throw out some names. Giuliani.
Great.
I thought it was terrific.
He was unhinged, awesome. I mean, he brought people to life.
And he was the right person for the law enforcement message, law and order message. You know, America's mayor, and then how he cleaned up New York City. Law enforcement loved him, but that really was, and it was criticized as being kind of shrill. But he really had that crowd in the palm of his hand. If you were in that room, there was no doubt they loved what Giuliani.
He brought to life. Everybody listened. I mean, the guy and his work that he's doing now in the Middle East with Iran and stuff. I mean, he is on it. He has an intimacy that's very unusual with the whole process, and he's been friends with Donald Trump. So there's kind of this dual messaging that came out of Giuliani that was so powerful.
Donald Trump Jr.
Right.
That kid was something else.
Something else. I mean, here again, you look at these kids. I mean, they're amazing. Yeah. They're remarkable young people. You see them speak, and you go, gosh, how do they keep this composure? You can see them. They kind of they almost, I mean, their values show in everything they do and they say.
Well, showing that side of him, the human side of Donald Trump, and when he said, my mentor, my best friend, my father, I thought any father would, those are the words every father wants to hear from their son. And so I thought that was a great line in that speech from him. I thought he did a phenomenal job. For me, the speech of the week, though, was Mike Pence. Yeah. That was my favorite speech of the week. I thought he did a phenomenal job of being humble in his speech, but at the same time powerful in his message. Not an easy thing to do.
No, and it's you never want the vice president to upstage the president either, or the presidential candidate. And Mike, I think, is really smart. I mean, if you look at his history in Congress and then now as governor, he has done some remarkable things, and he's a unifier. He's been a unifier, even though he is easily confident, proclaims social and fiscal conservative. He gets along with everybody, and he moves everything forward. And so, I mean, I think it was a great choice at this particular point.
To have a speech at the Republican National Convention where a man stands up and says, I'm proud to be gay, I'm proud to be a Republican, but most of all, I'm proud to be an American, a significant moment for the party, so to speak. But to hear the crowd's reception of that, do you think America was surprised by it?
I think America's surprised because the media has been painting this bigoted organization, the Republicans. So you see people from various minority groups, the gay lesbian community up there. You heard Trump's speech. I mean, people were probably, their jaws were probably hitting the floor because they couldn't censor this. They couldn't cut it. They had to let it just play out and do it. There were an amazing amount of takeaways where they restored really the party, the people, the community party. And that's one of the things I appreciated about a lot of those speeches.
So moving forward, as you move forward towards November, do you think that convention in Donald Trump's camp accomplished what they needed to give him, I mean, no one can predict victory 100%, but to give him a great shot at being the next president?
I think there's no question. I think now his organization is there, their ground game is taking shape. I mean, even here in Arizona, we had a meeting. We have 110 volunteers show up at our meeting to be community leaders, and we just haven't ever seen this happen before. And so I think people, their takeaway was really powerful. My 16-year-old son, I asked him at the end of the speech, I said, what was the one thing you got from that speech? If you could say, give it something. He said, I believe that he cares about us. And so if the American people are getting that message, because before they're saying he's hard, he's bombastic, he did come away. When he mentioned his dad, you could see him get a little bit welled up. I mean, that's where people were looking for, is that human element with Trump, and I think they found it.
In a moment, we switch, because the Democrats are meeting this week as Hillary Clinton takes her message to the country. We're going to ask Robert's opinion on that here, so stick around. All right, we are talking about the conventions. First, the Republican convention, which happened in Cleveland, and now the Democrats are meeting in Philadelphia. And Robert Graham is with us from the AZGOP. Before we move on to the Democrats, I want to ask you one moment, the Ted Cruz speech.
Right.
I watched that speech, and he had that crowd in the palm of his hand. The way he talked about freedom and talked about the platform and the priorities. And then he got to the end and said, we will unify this party, and you could feel that room kind of swell. And then he said, vote your conscience.
Right.
And that place turned. Not everybody in the room, but the vast majority of that room turned. You had some pretty strong words about that speech,
I did.
Which is rare for you. You're very subdued, and you're very careful in choosing your words. Why such strong reaction to the speech?
Well, when the word conscience, he's kind of ruined that word. I mean, it's like hope and change. You know, Republicans have a hard time saying those words now because of Obama. But it was just that. He had the opportunity to be the great unifier. And one of the things about the presidency is it's way bigger than an individual. It's way bigger than an individual's family. This is the nation, and this is the leader of the free world. And so when we're looking at the battle between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, it's an easy one for me. Even if somebody's not a big fan of Donald Trump, we know what Hillary's America looks like. We know what she's going to do in the seat and where she is. So here he has the opportunity to be this great unifier. Yeah, he would have been booed and hissed by a couple people that were avid supporters, but the body would have been awesome. He would have showed America that the Republican Party's together and we're pushing out. But instead he comes out with kind of a self-interested speech and does what he does and literally set the room on fire. When he walked onto the stage, there was a standing ovation. People were celebrating him coming out. Everybody was there. When he left the stage, if you watched him, he had his head down, and the party was divided. And that's, I mean, what kind of legacy is that? So he blew a golden opportunity, and in many ways, I think he lied to America by his behavior.
So let's move to the Democrats. They meet this week, 2 days in, not a mention of ISIS.
Right.
And very soundly criticized, but the coverage seems to be different to me.
Right.
I'm blown away. CNN was covering. Protesters were blocking and laying in the road so delegates couldn't get in. Live coverage with a reporter. They go to the studio and say, hey, we have to break in. We've got some breaking events going on. Boys to Men were going on stage. They went to music.
That's right.
And it seems as if they were looking for unrest in Cleveland. And maybe I'm biased in my opinion. I try to admit my biases. Do you see a media bias in the coverage?
Oh, there's no question. I mean, this has been, you know, standing back as kind of a political science or somebody's in the mode of being politics. You watch, you look for great events, you look for ways of doing things, and so you try to keep an open mind. Well, in our event, this was the smoothest RNC convention I think I've ever even heard of. Definitely personally participated. It was amazing.
Incredible.
Yeah, the law enforcement, everybody. There were pockets of unrest, but there was very little. We didn't feel it. Never saw it. I never saw it. I've never felt it. And then you saw the reports in the media that there had, oh, Black Lives Matter, and oh, here comes the Black Panthers and all these types of things that were. And we didn't see it. We didn't feel it. So they're very small, isolated issues. Here at the DNC, you've got rallies, anti-Hillary rallies by the Bernie people. You have this where you're talking about the people laying down and trying to keep the delegates. We didn't have anything like this, and they don't even report it.
They tore the fence down yesterday.
That's right, and the fences we had never even got moved. I mean, I don't think anybody even attempted to do it. And so you look at the comparison, it's sad. And then when you hear Obama go up and give a speech, and he talks about how they're kind of the party of law enforcement, the party of unification, the party of national security. I mean, the American people are not asleep at the wheel, but the Dems are good at painting the fantasy and the fairy tale, and the media is great at compelling the message forward to America, and so it's a shame.
How much does this email dump hurt Hillary Clinton when it shows a divide with Bernie Sanders? But we don't even know the full extent yet. Does it damage them quite a bit, do you think?
Yeah, I think so. I think the Bernie Sanders culture is much like Ron Paul's culture, where they were very motivated behind Ron Paul, very motivated behind Bernie. When you see this kind of what happened at the end of the election of 2012, after the Republican National Convention, the Ron Paul people went to sleep. They were young, they were active, they were activists. It was a really great little niche within the Republican Party. They went to sleep. I think the same thing is happening now within the Democrat Party. They felt like they were used and abused and mistreated and cheated, and so they're going to sleep. So this division is going to be something. The emails are already playing favor to us as well,
right?
Because we're starting to see in our state there's some lawsuits and things that relate to our state, and their emails are going to show that it's a frivolous lawsuit. So we're thrilled that the emails came out, but it does show that disjointedness in the Democrats.
All right, last question. Finish this sentence. Donald Trump is our next president if he
wins.
Well, of course, if he wins, but what does he need to do to do that?
I'll tell you what, he needs to stay on point. He needs to keep being Donald Trump. Trump needs to be Trump, and then but you need to make sure that the people have clarity and substantive messages, so they know what exactly he's going to do the first week he's in presidency, the first 100 days. If he can put that on the table, then people will be confident that he's going to be the commander-in-chief and the right commander-in-chief for America.
All right, so there it is, Robert Graham with the Republican Party here in the state of Arizona. And as I've said before, you're doing a phenomenal job with the party. Young people coming in, older people sticking around, and it seems to be in places it hasn't been in a long time, so we appreciate it.
Hey, thank you.
All right.
All right, thanks.
We'll be right back. This is the part of the show that really makes me proud. This is where we congratulate and thank the Arizona men and women who have volunteered to serve in our country's military. We call it From Arizona for America. Here are just a few of the names of recent graduates from boot camp that are now defending our freedoms. So join me in honoring Airman Corey Scrudland from Pinnacle High School in Phoenix, Arizona. Airman Carissa Blyton from Kingman High School in Kingman. Airman James Getz III from Higley High School in Gilbert, and Private Pedro Montez III from Carl Hayden High School in Phoenix. For a full list of more of our friends and neighbors that are from Arizona for America, you can go to the Mike Broomhead Show page at AZTV.com. We'll be back here in just a minute with Broomhead's Best and #this, so don't go away. Time for my favorite part of the show. We call it Broomhead's Best. Darnell Dockett, who has been a fan favorite 10 years as an Arizona Cardinal, then he left on not such good terms with the Cardinals. Three-time Pro Bowler, drafted by the Cardinals from Florida State University, signed a one-day ceremonial contract and retires as an Arizona Cardinals. All is right with the world. Congratulations, Darnell, on a great career. That is Broomhead's best. Now we do something we call #this. We're calling this one #Sleep Willie. Not Slick Willie, Sleep Willie. Bill Clinton did what the rest of us did, fell asleep during Hillary's speech. If you didn't see the video, it's a great one. Look for it anywhere online. He's obviously dozing off with Kane sitting right next to him, who looks very uncomfortable. He doesn't know if he should nudge him or what he should do, but he definitely fell asleep. We'll be back here in just a minute to close out the show, so don't go away. So the Republicans have spoken, the Democrats have spoken, and now it's our turn to speak. This election is going to be decided by that big group of people in the middle who may lean one way or the other, but they don't have an allegiance to either party. A lot of people made their decisions already. The people in Cleveland already knew who they were voting for. So did the people in Philadelphia. But your decision matters. Everybody should be registered to vote if you are of voting age, and be an informed voter. Don't just take my opinion for it. Seek out people you trust. Look at organizations you trust. This election is so important. Let's make the right decisions. We'll be back next week. Have a great week, everyone. God bless.
Get more of Mike Broomhead on Facebook, Twitter, and of course weekday mornings from 6 to 10 on News Talk 550 KFYI.